Hello, hello. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another monthly live stream. We have not that many questions today, but we're going to get set up to our audio tests and then let folks trickle in before we get started. Audio sounds good. Okay, cool. Let me grab some stuff. So before jumping to the questions, make a couple of announcements today. Let me grab one of my things real quick, though. Okay, where is it? Just trying to log into LinkedIn first to make sure I can get the comments. Okay, cool. Johnny's in the house. What is up, Johnny? Okay, cool. So we're going to make some announcements first, and then we'll jump right into the questions. The first announcements I'll make, and then I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. Here we go. All right. Let me make this a little bigger. Cool. So some of you guys, if you've been following along, are already aware of this, but I recently published 2 courses. Both of them are free. Highly encourage you to check it out. This is OpenClint Tech. You can just go to openclintech.com. Actually, let me post that in the chat. Steven's in the house. What's going on, Steven? Let me actually put on some music real quick so we can have something to listen to. Good. That's good. Post this. So you can check out all the materials and content by going to openclintech.com/learn. There's a lot of great Fire. Most of my content has been focused around Fire. It helps me learn, but also provide some great resources to others who are interested. A lot of these are more advanced things, but hopefully that's helpful for those. I know a lot of engineers in particular have been watching a lot of the Fire stuff, but highly encourage our clinical colleagues to as well. Other than that, here are the 2 courses. Highly recommend you check it out. I probably spent more than 40 hours putting together this course and really consolidating a lot of the information. Very relevant for 2024. So highly encourage you to check that out when you get a chance. This is the newest one. We'll love to hear feedback from those who have taken it already. Really taking a super simple concept and delivering a fully fledged web application that you can use. So let me know if you've taken the courses, if you enjoy them, what feedback you have, and any ideas for future things you want to learn. One of the things I know I'm going to work on next, which would be a nice simple add to this, because this one seemed to pick up a decent amount of traction, is simply incorporating the ChatGPT or OpenAI's APIs to this. So basically turning this into a AI web app. And it's super simple. So let me know if you have any ideas for things you want to learn first. Steve says the first course was great. I'm looking forward to checking out the second course. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I'm very curious what else you guys want to learn, especially if it's too hard or too simple. There's a wide range of people taking the courses, people who are engineers who are very familiar with Python, and some who have never touched Python before. So very curious to know just as much feedback as possible so we can tailor these courses as much as I can. Okay, so that's kind of the announcements. I'm going to jump into the questions next. And of course, if you guys are on the live stream, definitely ask your questions here and we will answer live. Let's see. Let me add the last caption. As a quick plug, you guys can always submit questions for the next live stream at briankfung.com/AMA. Okay, let's jump into the questions. Let me grab the first one. It's a little long, and I'm going to read. There's a background, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. So I'm just going to post the questions. Okay, here is the question, and I'm going to read the background. So the question, or the background is, hey Brian, I am a Egyptian pharmacist, graduated in 2014. Let me stop sharing my screen. Egyptian pharmacist, graduated in 2014, that been in love with technology and programming for 17 years and working on my equivalency here in the US. I really love to work in a field that gathers both worlds. I know a lot of programming languages and have a lot of projects. So the first question is, do you still recommend this pathway 2 years later? And I actually grabbed this question off of YouTube, and it was on the video about what an informatics pharmacist does. So the short answer to that is definitely yes. I think there's a lot of flexibility and transferable skills if you pursue an informatics route. You can go many different places. I've got firsthand experience of that. So my primary experience was in hospital setting, and when I was searching for jobs, I was able to take that informatics experience coupled with the experience in hospitals and get job offers in industry like pharma, consulting, like management consulting, places like the three big places, Bain, McKinsey, and BCG, federal government, so NIH, CDC, places like that. Of course, healthcare tech. So I'm at Verily, and so the short answer again to your question: do you still recommend pursuing this pathway? 100%. If you love the work that you do in hospital and health systems, fantastic. If you want to transfer out to a different industry, you can do that as well. So highly encourage anyone to pursue informatics if you have an interest in it. The next question that is related, let's see. Is it worth it? I would think so. I question, this would be a bit of a hot take. I question whether the route I took is worth it, because I went a very traditional route, and that is pharmacy school followed by 2 years of residency, with my second year being in pharmacy informatics. And then most people who at that time graduated, the gold standard experience to have was a EHR Go Live, and I got 4 of those when I was at Mayo. So going that route was very long, and I question whether or not it's worth it, because with all the hype and interest around industries outside of healthcare, I think you can make a pretty good argument of not doing residency, perhaps doing something else, maybe a master's in computer science or a fellowship like at the CDC or just some other route, and you can probably land other very unique roles out there if that is your end goal. Now, if you want to work in a hospital, I think residency is still a pretty good path forwards. And overall, the answer to the question, I would say, is it worth it? For me, it was yes. I think it's questionable if it is worth it for others who may not want to do the same things I did. But overall, yes, I'm pretty happy with where I am. I think I've progressed faster in my career just because of having those 2 years of residency experience. Let's see. Next related question on that is, does it pay better than retail pharmacists? Let me see. I don't know what the recent statistics on, but let's take a look at pharmacists BLS. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics for pharmacists, this is 2023. 136,000 a year. I think they grouped it by retail and hospital before. Median wage is 136. What they do? Let me pay. I wonder if they split that up. Oh, nice. I think they do. Cool. Median for 136 in May. The lowest 10% earned 89. and the highest 10 earn 168, meaning top industry. So ambulatory seems to be the highest right now, 150. Hospitals at 144. Yeah. So what's fascinating about this is that this used to be flipped, right? I think most of us knew that pharmacists in retail or community settings got paid more. You didn't have to do a residency. You can go straight into retail, and hospitals always paid less. And it's definitely flipped, and it should be pretty obvious if you've been in pharmacy that you know that they've been doing a lot more. Let's see if they have it here. I think they talk about it. I know they talked about it in the previous places. Maybe it's Job Outlook. Yeah. So I think typical economics, right? Supply and demand for pharmacists in healthcare settings like hospitals and clinics have been going up. And then demand for pharmacists working in retail settings, which include independent and chain, has been going down. And a lot of it's, they always bring up industry consolidation and mail order prescription. So it just kind of makes sense. All the pay just kind of flipped. Now, it doesn't answer your question directly, which your question again was, does it pay better than retail pharmacists? I would say yes. I started around 136 when I joined informatics in the hospital. So this was like 9 years ago. I can tell you that my informatics colleagues makes a lot more than that. So short answer is yes. I don't know what the typical going rate for a retail pharmacist, but I would bet that it's going down. And at least from BLS, it is about this much. So I would think yes. Let's move on. I think there's one more question on here. Does it pay better? Oh yeah, here it is. Last question is, what do you suggest me to study or certification needed to continue to proceed in the IP route? Yeah, this one's really hard because I don't know what, like, I know your background is you graduated in 2014 and you came to the US and you're studying it now. If you have a lot of experience, which it sounds like you do, it says technology and programming for 17 years, I may suggest informatics pharmacy. Straight up applying to informatics jobs and seeing where you get with that, because you have a lot of experience and you can probably land some decent jobs. The one distinction I'll make though, and this differs everywhere, is that, let me stop this question. Stop sharing. The one distinction I'll make is that I've never coded when I was an informatics pharmacist. And I don't know many colleagues that did code. So I wouldn't say that, I think it's a nice to have, but it's not really one of the key requirements. One of the other things I'll share is that I think ASHP has a certification for pharmacy informatics. It just renewed, I believe, this year. And I think if you're looking for more experience or some type of education around what pharmacy informatics, like what the role entails and stuff, that may be a worthwhile thing to check out. I also had Pharmacy Informatics Academy. Let me see if I search that real quick. Here it is. Check this out when you get a chance if you want to learn more. I helped co-found this a few years ago. We have a free course that just kind of goes a little bit more into it. I think what should stand out is that we don't code. You can, but it's not a typical skill set. And then we have a second course for $99. And this goes into much more details about what we do as informatics pharmacists. But yeah, I think two things. One, straight up applying to those jobs. And then second, if you're finding you're not getting a lot of luck, just purely learning more about the role, because it might be very different than what you're expecting. And then figuring out what you need to build up to that skill set. I don't know if there's any de facto certification or training that you need to do that really makes one stand out. Aside from doing like 2 years of residency, which I'm assuming you're probably not going to want to do if you've been working that long already. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Let's move on to the next question. Let me just check the chat. Okay, this looks good. Let me go to the next question. And I'm gonna, the background's a little longer on this one. Okay, so the question goes, I have been following your channel since I first came across health informatics. You have been bringing up great videos, which are really helpful for upcoming folks who want to pursue an informatics career. I got my degree in PharmD and graduating in January. I am planning to get into a master's in health informatics as I am into computer programming and stuff. So I think this would be a great way for me to apply my technical skills into the healthcare domain. There are a few questions I have, and I hope you can answer them as soon as possible. Okay, so the first question I have posted here. What are the major and minor roles? Major and minor roles of a health informaticist. What I would say is my answer to most things, which is it just depends. And I think the reason why is because there's a video. Let me link the video real quick. I did on this. I think it was a informatics. I'm going to share my screen. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, check out this video if you haven't got a chance. I spent a lot of time putting this one together, and it's very short and succinct to the point. So hopefully this is helpful. I just want to find a diagram to show you. Let's see. Yeah, so this is one of the best ways I like to think about it is the medication use process. You have prescribing, verification, dispensing, administration, monitoring. If you're in pharmacy, you know about the medication use process. And then you can see here, what I have labeled is the different technologies associated with each of these. And why my answer is it depends. Both, whatever role you have, it could be major or minor. It really depends because, where is it? Here it is. Whoever hires you may have you do parts of this, all of it, or some different combination of it. And so it really depends on what it is. But every role that you have will likely revolve around one of these key parts of the medication use process. That's probably the best way of thinking about it. Now, if you're going outside of pharmacy, that changes things a little bit. And I would say there's another video that I have that goes over it. And I think I've been exploring this a little bit more. Basically, AMIA has this nice definition that breaks it down into these areas. Check out this video if you want to learn more about that. But this goes a little bit outside of pharmacy informatics. So pharmacy informatics kind of fits in that clinical informatics bucket. But there's a whole interesting world out there about biomedical informatics that includes other domains that are super fascinating. But your role can be a little different if you venture into some of these other areas. Okay, so that's the first question. Hopefully that is a little bit helpful. Let's move to the next one. Second part of your question is, after earning a, let me stop sharing. After earning a master's degree, can we move into healthcare IT? The assumption would be, I'll assume yes. I can't guarantee that. Right. Depends on the role. Some employers look highly upon a master's in health IT. Some do not. Really depends on the school, depends on the job position, all those kind of things. I've never seen it as a hard requirement for entering, especially if you're a pharmacist. Your domain expertise usually gives you a nice advantage because you're building solutions for people who work in that field, right? So just being a pharmacist alone helps you a lot, but it certainly helps. I would maybe say, if you want to scope it down to hospital and health systems and you're hoping to do informatics or specifically pharmacy, actually not even specifically pharmacy informatics, if you're looking to do informatics in a typical hospital and healthcare setting, what probably sets you apart the most is whether or not you have certifications in the EHR vendor that hospital uses. So the classic example is the Epic certifications. Epic has many different applications like Willow for pharmacy, Radiant for radiology, Optime for surgery, things like that. And usually when folks are hiring for those type of roles, it's usually in one of those applications. And I would say that's probably the thing that makes you much more competitive than a master's in health IT. But I do know plenty of people who have pursued a health master's and, was much more competitive to others as well. It's a lot of different factors. I don't think a master's alone makes you guarantees a job, but I can tell you that you probably get much more hits if you have a certification in one of those HR vendors. Even better is if you have a certification plus a master's. That's always nice. So hopefully that kind of helps answer the question. And then I think you have you have two more. Go on to the next question. Next question is, what is this? Oops. Trying to read this. Does the state require a license for pharmacy informaticists and health informaticists, or do we need one if we want to work in a corporate field? Yeah, it's a great question. And it also depends. So I can give you my personal experience on this and maybe share a couple of anecdotal comments. First off, like I said, it depends. It depends a lot on the employer. So when I was at Florida, yes, the hospital I worked at required it. When I was at Utah, yes, the hospital at Utah required it. When I was at Mayo in Minnesota, yes, the Mayo required it as well. So in all three of those places, when I wanted to work with, when I wanted to do informatics, which doesn't always have direct patient care, mostly it doesn't have direct patient care. Some have like these kind of joint roles where you do direct patient care part of the time, you do informatics on the other side. Those definitely you would need a pharmacy license, but most pharmacy informatics positions I don't think usually have a direct care component. But in most places all the places I've worked at require a license to practice. Now, going to a different industry, so maybe that's part of your question here, is if you work for non-hospital and healthcare systems, you may not require it. So at my current company, at Verily, I did not need a pharmacy license to get my job. But my job is also not a pharmacy specific one either. It's much more broad. So it really depends on your job and your employer. I know some places employed informatics pharmacists that didn't require a license, but that's probably more of the exception rather than the norm. So getting a license is always good. I still have my license in all three states, and I plan to keep it for the near term. So hopefully that helps. Maybe the TLDR is that if you're working in a hospital and health system, you probably will be required to have it. If you're working outside of the industry, you probably will not. So the last question. Okay. Here is the last question. And the last question is, Is it possible to switch careers into tech as a software developer with a master's in health informatics? It's a great question. I would think, I mean, it depends on yourself, right? I think it depends on a lot of your experience as well. So make a couple comments and you can make the assessment on your own. The first thing is, I don't typically think of folks who have a master's in health informatics as a pathway towards being a software developer or software engineer. That just seems, it's a nice to have. I don't think it's a need to have. I think of folks who enter software development as individuals who have a computer science or math type background. You have to have a much stronger programming background and software design background. So I would venture to think not. So that's the first comment. It's not the typical persona, let's put it that way. The second comment is that during the pandemic years, especially in the last few years, maybe not right now, definitely not right now, but during the pandemic years where like tech was booming, a lot of people were switching into tech by simply doing boot camps. So just purely learning how to write code to do a particular thing using like some framework. And I use an example of like one of the ones I did is like using Fast API, which is a Python framework for creating web applications. There are companies that hire people that can build web applications. You don't need to go to school to do that. I mean, it's good. The school teaches you the design, the foundations, like the overall architecture, lots of really important things. But when people are hiring, especially at that time, all you need is someone that knows how to create a web application, because that's the business. So it didn't really matter at that point, just knowing the skills. So I say that because it doesn't really, the degrees are nice. And I think like, especially right now with the job market being tight, having some formal training is helpful. But I think the more important thing people assess for is, can you actually even do the job? Can you actually write code? Can you program? Can you design a system? I think that's much more important rather than saying, do you have a master's in health informatics? I care more about whether or not you can do a job and do you have the skills to do it, not so much your degree. You can have like 5 PhDs. If you can't write a web application, you can't do the job. So that's the second thing I'll say. Much more dependent on your experience and what you can actually do than degree. The other thing is like, maybe the last thing I'll say, is it possible to switch? Absolutely. People switch from like, you can argue that I came from like a clinical world into this more of a tech world. By no means a software developer. I think it's very different. And then maybe one distinction on this is like, there's a lot of people that go down this data science route, which I did for quite a bit and I'm still kind of doing. And I think it's a great use of domain expertise. If you come from the clinical world, you can apply these different AI, ML algorithms to do data science. Really cool, really fun stuff. Doing data science work, which usually requires programming background like Python, is extremely different than the skill sets of a software engineer who's writing code. Or not, I shouldn't say that. Software engineers design systems, programmers write code. Software engineers just happen to also be able to write code. But there's a distinction between how you write code as a data science, because it's much more focused on building those models, versus like a software engineer or software developer who's writing true, like they think about the design and how you architect the code, if you will. I'm not doing a good job of explaining that, but basically it's very, very different. Yeah, so hopefully that is helpful. So you can think about it like that. But the short answer, yes, definitely possible, but I think it's much more dependent on your skills and experience to switch. Okay, I think that was the last question. And that is it. And we're actually at time, 1 minute over. So, okay, guys, thank you for joining the live stream. We'll see you guys next month. Again, if you have any other, hold on 1 second. If you have any other questions, definitely go back and plug the AMA. I'll share that one more time here. Oops, where is it? Yeah. If you have more questions for the future, definitely send them this way. Seems like the questions have been dwindling a little bit, so I'm going to start probably just sharing different news and things that come up that might be interesting to the community out there. But there is one other question here that maybe I'll answer and then we'll wrap up. That's live. Let me see if I can. No, see, sometimes it doesn't come up. I'm gonna post your question and then share it. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Of course, it cuts it off. All right, so the question is, or is it a question? No, maybe it's just a comment. Thanks for providing great information and resources for pharmacists. I also found a lot of the resources are applicable for pharmacy technicians, and looking forward to seeing more focus for pharmacy technicians too, to break into the space of informatics. But yeah, so more of a comment. Yeah, thanks for the comment. Definitely applicable to non-pharmacists, to pharmacy technicians. Many of the colleagues I worked with in informatics were pharmacy technicians, and they're great. I think you can't go wrong with having domain expertise in the area that you are supporting in informatics. And pharmacy technicians are the livelihood of pharmacy, and they do a lot of work to make sure pharmacy operations work. So absolutely. Okay, well, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next month, and don't forget, if you have questions for the future, submit it to briankfung.com/AMA.